for coming.
Thanks for having me.
What was it like growing up in New Jersey?
Jersey's interesting because it's like it's a state, so it's like we always getting compared with other cities that have scenes going on, but it's easier to unite with other artists around the city as opposed to being in a state where it's like things are deceptively spread out. So it's like we were building our own thing, early on in Montclair, and there was other stuff happening in Newark. There was like our homie Maroof over in Irvington had his scene going on, but it was hard to get all of those scenes to kind of come together, and that's why a lot of people, I think, a lot of Jersey artists end up like kind of just like fleeing to New York or going wherever else they could get it popping.
Who were some of your musical influences growing up?
I was getting a lot of music and shit from my dad, who's like, he's a funk musician, so he was always playing a lot of like Ohio Players and Prince and Jimi Hendrix and shit like that. A lot of that was a big influence early on, whether I realized it or not. But as far as like rap goes, when I first got into rap, it was like my cousins putting me on the Outkast, and like I really distinctly remember hearing Kanye on the radio for the first time, like the first time Through the Wire played in like my aunt's minivan, like that shit, like I remember that being like a plot point in my life, like what is this, So yeah.
Have you ever heard the theory that Kanye's Through the Wire was not actually because he got in a car crash?
Nah, what's the theory?
We'll go down the rabbit hole after the interview.
Okay, right.
What impact did your parents have on you, like getting you into music?
So my dad is a musician, so he didn't really push me toward music, but just like being around him, like going to his shows sometimes when it was at a place that they would like let me into as a young kid, seeing him produce from home. He had a home studio, and like home studios weren't as common as they are now. So I really got to see like music from the perspective of like really like building the shit, and working in the music industry being like a thing that's like very like achievable versus this like pipe dream. And then my mom just like, she was just very encouraging of any like artistic pursuit I had,
At what point did you start making music?
I probably started writing around like third, fourth grade. Like as soon as I could, like I realized I could like replace school assignments with poems and things like that is when I started kind of working it in. But I didn't start like really like trying to make songs until I think like junior high school. I got a computer from my grandmother right before she passed, and it had a GarageBand on it, and I just started like fucking around with loops and moved from there.
A computer when like we were young was so like hard to come by.
Life changing.
Yeah, for real.
Like friends would come over and we just like all week we're all on that one computer.
So you attended Renaissance Middle School?
Yeah.
How was your experience there?
Renaissance was like the weird kid middle school. There was like Glenfield and there was Mount Hebron. And Renaissance was like for people that didn't fit in either of those magnets. Like Glenfield was like the arts magnet. I technically could have gone there. And Mount Hebron was like math and science, I guess. And Renaissance was just like, we have really small class sizes. We take y'all on weird ass field trips. We don't have a gym or, even a place to eat lunch, but we use like nearby, like we did a lot of walking. Like they would take us, we'd walk over to the YMCA and we would have gym class there. And it was strange. Like the other kids, like coming into high school, there was a lot of like, those are the weird kids. But I think it was like a good experience because it just gave me a lot of perspective,
Where did y'all eat lunch?
We ate lunch at there was another high school like that we shared the building with, Immaculate Conception, that was like a Catholic school, and they had like basically the equivalent of a church basement, and we like ate in that. Yeah. Okay,
so Montclair High School. How was your experience there, and can you tell me about Mr. Fry?
Wow. Montclair High School was interesting. It's like a lot of kids from different like cities around Montclair, like Newark and East Orange. A lot of kids would like they would be sent by their family to come to Montclair High if they had like an aunt who lived in the area. So it was like an interesting like mix of people coming together. We were very blessed, like me and Thelonious and a lot of the people we came up with, that there was like people like Mr. Fry who was like just like a history or English teacher, I think, and he had all this old equipment from the 90s of him like recording his own bands and stuff, and and we expressed interest in like learning about music and making music, and he was like, well, if y'all want to do that, we can like create, you know, a club. So we made a recording club, I think our freshman year, and we would like after school we'd come to his classroom, and he would just have like a mic set up, and we like learned how to use a mic for the first time, you know, and all of those experiences are super huge as a young kid when you don't have like exposure to that.
So we're gonna act like he's not sitting right here, but you have a great relationship with Thelonious Martin. How did you two first meet?
We met, I want to say freshman year of high school, or maybe like the summer before. And we had a mutual friend. We had a bunch of mutual friends, but one kid in particular, this dude Matt Stith, who we're still both really close with to this day. And he just would have people over his crib, and he was one of the, like, before I was making beats, he was making beats. And they, I guess in middle school, they went to one of the cool middle schools, and they had like a little like rap group then. And I don't know, we just kind of came together at the right time, and he was trying to get into music. I was like already working on beats, and yeah, he like made his first beat in my basement, you know, just like messing around. And you know, 6 months later, we got a whole lot of beats, and I'm writing raps to them, and we're making songs, and we're putting them out. And then it's like, all right, where can we like rent a venue and throw a show? And it was like all very just like, we didn't know anything, but that was almost a blessing, because it's like we just kind of went for it and learned that way through trial and error.
How was your time at NYU?
You know, it was cool. It was like it was interesting to be put into a program with a lot of other artists and creatives and people who were trying to do something similar to what I was doing, just like being in the music industry, being an artist, versus going to like a conservatory where it's like all about like being super raw at your instrument. But I think like the biggest blessing was just being in New York, period, and kind of being thrown into like a big pond, because I had like by the end of high school, I had ascended the ranks of my own neighborhood and become like the guy when it came to like rapping in that area, or at least it felt like that amongst my friends and people I knew. And then going to New York was like that culture shock of like, oh, like I'm an ant here. And that was a very important perspective for me to get at that time.
So Sebastian Telfair,
okay,
what rapper would you compare him to?
Damn. I was gonna say like Murda Mook or somebody like that, you know, where there's like the lore and the stories of how they cooked people, you know, but never quite the like full, you know, development in that way, I guess.
7 years ago, you compared Sebastian Telfair to Papoose. I wanted to see if you'd be consistent 7 years later.
7 years ago, man. Wow. Shout out Papoose, man.
Yeah, I really wish you would have said Papoose.
I would listen, we could do it again.
Nah, it's ruined now. So earlier this year, you released your album, Don't Go Telling Your Mama. Right. What was the creation process of that project like?
It was different than like anything I had tried to make before, and I had an idea of what the story was going to be going into it. And, you know, I really focused on like what would be the film about like my time coming up in Jersey, and I made like a quasi film script around it, like a screenplay, and then I like turned it into an outline that all the music was made, kind of like we were like scoring a film that didn't exist yet. So it was ironic that it like turned into a film as well, because like the whole thing was sort of like, it felt like screenwriting. And then we brought a bunch of musicians and producers that I fuck with, and brought him up to the Poconos. My engineer, his aunt had a crib that we just used. We put a drum set in the living room, and we just like shedded over like a bunch of like ideas and skeletons I had started new things, but we all knew going in. I sent people playlists to listen to, movies to watch. Like I kind of like set the tone for it.
Yeah. Do you have a personal favorite song off the project?
That's always difficult, because it's like, you know, I've lived with these songs so much, you know, especially on an album that like essentially took like 3+ years to make. I've had a lot of time, like each of these songs have spent a lot of time being my favorite and then fall into the background and then come back again. I think for me, like Who is one that really shines through for me because it was like a later addition to the album, and I really felt like it needed that energy. And then I kind of like, you know, I just produced that one in the very last minute of like putting the songs together, and then for like Fonte to hop on it and Maxo, you know, it turned into something much larger than the like kind of inkling I started with, that it just needed this kind of like posse track energy.
So the short film that you shot around the project won an award at the Sundance Festival, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
How did that feel?
It was dope, man. I think, you know, the blessings that we've received with this film, it's like, you know, I'm just like grateful for it, and it's like really, it's taught me a lot because we didn't go in with the intention of winning any awards. Like there was never a time when we were making it where we were like, oh, this is gonna like get into the film festivals. Like film festivals weren't even on our radar. So it's like when that moment happens, it's like, okay, this is super organic. This isn't because I was like forcing things. This is me like really just like walking in alignment with what I'm supposed to be doing, and the universe kind of responding to that. So I was like super grateful for that.
Do you have a favorite section of the short film? Because I noticed it's kind of like a bunch of different parts.
Yeah, it's broken up into vignettes. I think like my favorite letter, like personally, is probably R, because the R is for Rich. It's featuring my grandmother. And you know, to have her not only like just telling this beautiful story about our family lineage, but also just to document her. She's like 95, and to have her there in 35 millimeter at the house that I spent like half of my childhood growing up in, it's like, that's just a beautiful record to have. And also I know I'll always be able to like show like my kids kids that in a way that like I didn't get to see. Like I don't really know what my like great grandmother like looks like really. I have like one or two photos, you know.
No, that's beautiful. How did you go about choosing who you wanted to be in the short film? Like all those interviews that you did?
The interviews, it was like, you know, we felt like a responsibility to the Black ABCs, which like started here in Chicago as well, to capture and show respect to the energy, which was, you know, it was educational. It was about giving people, giving young Black kids like some of the stuff that they're maybe missing out on. And I think like in kind of capturing my upbringing, it would be disingenuous for me to not like give some time to the people that were really like doing the work that disrupted a lot of the more negative influences I had growing up that I could have like fallen victim to. So, you know, when it came to doing the interviews, it was just like, let's not like look for like the biggest like person in that field or the hottest celebrity we could get like to bring attention to the film. Like let's just see who's like actually in our extended network. So all those people are people that are like somewhat connected to me, like Keith White, who's the lawyer we talked to in Always For Organized. Like he's my lawyer, in addition to being like on the criminal defense side and working in community organizing. And you know, Kaidi Rodriguez, who we talked to in the Vias for Vulnerability scene, like she's a Black woman who has a therapy business in Montclair. And it's like, if I would have grown up knowing that, I maybe would have been more interested in therapy, you know. So it's like all these people, like Ivy Soul was like just like a great artist who I'm friends with. We just put a record out recently. You know, these are people that are like kind of finding their way into my life at this time anyway, and it was just like a natural extension and to reach out to people we really knew and rocked with.
Is it true that you once owned a pair of boxers that had a customized pocket for condoms?
This gotta be how niggas feel on Nardwar. This is crazy. You brought it to the boxers. Yeah, that is true. I'm freaked out a little bit right now. You're definitely the feds. I think I had a homie who he was working on launching an underwear business, and his whole thing was he wanted to like kind of revolutionize like the way underwear works. And you know, underwear is a fairly simple invention. So he's like, well, what if we got like a pocket for the condom? So yeah, I had a prototype. I don't think I still have it.
I hope not. That was 10 years ago.
Sheesh.
So a few years ago, you had a chance to get interviewed in freestyle on Sway in the Morning.
Mm-hmm.
What was that experience like, freestyling for like one of the interview goats?
It was dope, man. Especially as a kid who like grew up like watching the videos of like Eminem freestyling for Sway and like just wanting to freestyle on the radio forever. I think like the only thing that could match that is like a Funk Flex, you know. And also he was so like welcoming and cool to me. Like he really like fucked with what I was doing. He like gave me his phone number. Like it was like real love, you know. The one thing I will say is he leaned into the funk shit and played a lot of like funk songs for me to rap over, which was fine, but they were also very upbeat. So it was just like I had to really like focus in on getting all those words out because it was all like at least like 10 BPM faster than I was expecting to rap.
So 10 years ago today, on October 10th, 2011, you attended a TMNJ concert.
That sounds about right. Yeah.
How was that?
We were hosting it, man. That was like, you know, all the homies from high school. We used to throw shows like all over the tri-state area. I don't remember exactly which show that was, but I do remember that time and how important it was for me to have like other people to spar against and just like have steel sharpen steel. You know, that's another thing of like us all figuring it out. You know, Thelonious was part of that too. And we were just like really like in my basement, just trying shit, you know, and like it feels good to think about it, and I have a lot of fond memories because it's attached to a time when I was just a lot freer, you know. And I think like since then I've been chasing down that freedom of really not giving a fuck what anybody thinks, you know.
Can you tell me about the importance of Glenfield Park?
Glenfield Park. Glenfield Park is like probably the closest park to where I grew up. I probably frequented Rand Park, which was like near my elementary school more, but Glenfield Park, you know, like that's a part of Montclair where like a lot of community events would take place. They would have like the African American parade every year, and it would be like, you know, Montclair has a lot of black people, but like all the black people would come out for that day, and there'd be like all these like stands set up and people selling things. And then also like my mom used to like always make me do like weird like community service activities, and I felt like it was always like meeting at Glenfield Park first, and like some like Hotep dude would be like, all right, we going here. And like, you know, just like a lot of those experiences around like organizing and like community action, like for in Montclair at least, were like that was like a hub for that.
Who are some artists that you want to work with in the future?
I mean, you know, like right now I'm really just exploring, so I'm like more open-minded I think right now than any other time. There's an artist named John Bapp that I would really love to work with. Another artist who was on the album, Gabriel Garzon Montano, who I'm due to work on some more stuff with as well. Who am I excited about right now, man? There's just like so much, like people like to shit on music. I think there's really like so much good music right now. You know, it's like it's just where you're looking, and you know, I couldn't. It would take the entire length of this interview for me to list out everybody I want to work with. But I'm very interested in starting to step into producing for other people too. Like I really love to like produce, like some R&B records or work with some female vocalists and just like expand the horizons a little bit.
Then the last question I have for you is, where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Still growing, still getting better. I'm really like recommitting myself to the craft of what I'm doing and just like trying to make great albums and write great verses and continue to make people feel new things and broaden the experience of what an album and a rap album can be. So hopefully I'll still be, you know, pushing that, you know.